We're going to continue with the timeline of the U.S.-Iran conflict. We started at August 2018, and now we've gone through May of 2019. And now we're going to take a look at January 1st, 2020, when after the U.S. dropped airstrikes over Iraq, they retaliated supposedly with Iran-backed protesters by attacking the U.S. embassy. So let's take a look at what they're talking about.
Violence continues outside the U.S. Embassy in Iraq this morning. Demonstrators led by Iranian-backed militias are protesting for a second straight day. The Pentagon's released new video of Marines arriving at the site. The protests followed deadly U.S. airstrikes responding to an attack that killed a U.S. contractor. In Florida last night, President Trump said he does not want war with Iran. Chief Washington correspondent Major asked the president's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, about Iran in an exclusive interview.
Should the American people contemplate being on a war footing in 2020 where Iran is concerned?
This is state-sponsored terror. This is Iranian-backed terrorism that took place that threatened American interests. We've taken a fundamentally different approach. We have starved them of resources. We've denied them access. We've put pressure on the Iranian leadership, and I think you see that.
This morning, Iran's supreme leader strongly condemned the U.S. attacks in Iraq. Holly Williams is tracking the violence in Baghdad. Holly, good morning.
Good morning. Protesters outside the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad again this morning have been throwing rocks and setting fire to an American flag. Marines have moved from their base in nearby Kuwait to reinforce security.
Okay, so it's important to point out that they said the protesters are simply burning U.S. American flags and just throwing rocks at the embassy. No one was hurt. All right, keep that in mind.
The troops from the 82nd Airborne Division will be deployed to the Middle East in coming days. And last night, U.S. Apache helicopters dropped flares in a show of force. American personnel inside the embassy are safe, according to the State Department, and there are no evacuation plans. But the violent protesters were able to enter the supposedly high-security green zone in Baghdad under the noses of Iraqi security forces, raising questions about their complicity. The demonstrations were led by militia groups with backing from Iran. America is now vying with Iran for influence over Iraq, tensions that some fear could become a full-blown proxy war. Adriana.
Holly Williams in Turkey, thank you.
All right, so yeah, in that video we see about a week ago, January 1st, 2020, basically the U.S. dropped some airstrikes over Iraq in retaliation to what they said a U.S. contractor was killed. And then in response to the airstrikes from the U.S., Iraq protesters backed by Iran start protesting at the embassy. Okay? All right, so we're going to pick up from January 3rd, 2020, when the U.S. airstriked one of Iran's top commanders or generals. So let's see what this is all about.
The aftermath shows an attack that was deliberate and sustained. With around a half dozen explosions, the Americans firing with drones clearly didn't want to miss their target, Iran's general Qasem Soleimani. He'd reportedly just gotten into Iraq from Beirut and was leaving Baghdad airport when he was killed in a convoy of vehicles along with a top Iraqi militia leader. President Trump tonight.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him.
The imminent attacks planned by Soleimani targeted U.S. diplomats, U.S. military personnel, and facilities that house Americans in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and the region of the Middle East, a senior State Department official told reporters today. Qasem Soleimani was no ordinary general. The U.S. officially classified him as a terrorist, but in Iran, he was a national hero. Specifically, Soleimani was in charge of spreading Iranian influence around the world, and he was extremely good at it. Smart, charismatic, ruthless, strategic, and bold, Soleimani knit together a loyal network of armed groups from Iraq to Syria, Lebanon to Afghanistan. Anytime Iran attacked oil tankers in the Persian Gulf and then denied it.
Let's stop there for a moment, because what they're basically saying is this leader was going around and spreading the message of Iran, to neighboring countries, and and spreading influence, basically. Now, we need to pay attention to what they're promoting here, because who is spreading more influence around the world than the USA? So what gives the USA the right to do that and not other countries? Let's continue.
Attacked oil facilities in Saudi Arabia and denied that too. U.S. officials saw Soleimani's handiwork. His power made Iranians proud. Today, Iranians in the thousands came out to show their love and their anger. Soleimani was arguably Iran's most popular leader. For years, Soleimani operated in the shadows, and he spilled a lot of American blood. He was the secret architect of a long campaign against U.S. troops in Iraq after the 2003 invasion, killing hundreds. Back then, his face was barely known. But over the last few years, Soleimani has gotten bolder, showing photographs of himself on battlefields around the Middle East, issuing statements. His pride and increasing profile may have made him easier to track down and kill. There was talk in Iran.
Okay, so basically they're saying, going back to the wars, the earlier wars in Afghanistan, that he had, made the plans or was able to have hundreds of American soldiers killed, right? So here's the question we need to ask ourselves, first of all. Why do we believe it's okay to invade another nation's country and kill and pillage their land and their people, but when those people want to protect themselves from the invaders, the U.S. invaders, then they're somehow the aggressors? So let's continue.
Soleimani might be a future president, or perhaps even a supreme leader. Today, the man who has that role, Iran's top Ayatollah, visited Soleimani's family and promised severe revenge. The most immediate concern is in Baghdad, where Shiite militia leaders loyal to Soleimani, the same militias that for days attacked the U.S. embassy, will take to the streets tomorrow to mourn and show their rage.
And Richard joins us now from Iraq, where our team is hearing late word of another airstrike. Richard, what do we know?
An Iraqi security official told us that another convoy has been targeted by an American airstrike. This convoy carrying leaders from the Iraqi Shia militias, those same militias who are going to protest tomorrow, angry protests in Baghdad, not far from the U.S. Embassy. So this could escalate. It could lead to a cycle of violence. It just got more dangerous tonight.
Richard Engel with that breaking news from Iraq. Thank you. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking.
Okay, so I just want to say, I don't know any of these people, these generals or commanders from Iran and Iraq, but what I will say is, we don't have a right to go in another nation's country and bomb their people and say that if we don't do it, then hundreds or whatever amount of American lives are at risk. If the U.S. is the ones invading another country, they're the aggressors. All right, so that brings us up to the timeline of the conflict between U.S. and Iran as of now, which is early January of 2020. We'll continue once we get more information. Catch you guys later.